Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as I talk about winter sowing some cool annuals. So let's go. This will be my 4th year of winter sowing, and I have to tell you, I'm hooked. I totally love it. I think it's a great thing to do during the winter months. It's easy, it's cheap, and it works out really well, especially if you don't have the space to grow plants or seeds inside your house, or you don't have any sort of special equipment to grow those plants with. I've made a bunch of videos that you might be interested in, so I'll put a link to that winter sowing playlist down below. There are winter sowing reveal videos, there's videos on how to winter sow different types of perennials, common mistakes people make, so be sure to check out those videos in the playlist after you're done with this video. Also, I love collecting my own seeds because it's a lot cheaper than buying seeds. So I've collected a lot of the seeds that you're going to be seeing today. If you're interested on how to collect seeds from different plants, I also have a playlist that I'll link below that shows you how to collect your own seeds. Today is February 3rd. I live in New Hampshire. I garden in zone 5B, and my average last frost date is around May 15th. When it comes to winter sowing, I pretty much winter sow perennials. And the reason is perennials are so expensive. It's so much cheaper to start them from seed. This will be my first year truly winter sowing annuals. And that's why I wanted to start with winter sowing cool annuals first, which is what this video is about. Cool annuals are pretty much annuals that can be hardy in my zone. And one way that I know an annual can be hardy in my zone is that it comes back year after year. It almost acts like a perennial, but it's not a perennial. It basically is a plant that drops its seeds or self-sows, and then the following year, those plants emerge. And it's always a pleasant surprise for me. And I've learned that I actually have a good amount of plants that readily self-sow in my yard that are considered annuals or cool plants. So 3 plants that I will not be going over today are poppies, rudbeckia, and foxglove. I've already winter sown those, and I've already made videos showing you my process for those. Now we're going to talk about what supplies you need when you're winter sowing. First of all, you need some sort of a container to do your winter sowing in. It needs to be either clear or translucent. My container of choice is milk jugs. I have a lot of milk jugs. In fact, I save them all year long, and that way I end up with plenty of them this time of year. If you don't have milk jugs, you can also use something like water jugs or juice bottles. You can call local coffee shops like Starbucks, and a lot of times they'll save their milk jugs for you. But you don't need to be limited when it comes to milk or juice jugs. You can even use things like rotisserie chicken containers or Ziploc bags. Some people have used clear totes and they've put pots inside of those. Be creative, do your research. There are so many different ways you can do it. And I mentioned I save my milk jugs all year long. And right here, for example, is a huge bag of them, and I have probably another 2 or 3 of them saved up. So it's always a good idea to be saving them during the year in an area so that you're ready to go during the winter months. And if you are going to use something like milk, water, or juice jugs, you're going to need something sharp to cut the containers with. It could be scissors. I like to use something like these cutting shears. You can use a blade. Just be careful because you don't want to cut your hand with anything that's sharp. If you are going to use something like the milk jugs, you're going to need a way to close the containers. I like to use duct tapes. I've found that it really holds well in the weather and in the elements. You'll want potting mix. It can be used potting mix. It can be DIY potting mix. You just don't want to use soil that's out from your garden because that's too heavy. And you also don't want to use seed starting mix because it's too light and fluffy. You'll need water because you want to either pre-moisten your potting mix or you want to spray the seeds once you've sown them. I like to use something like this. It's a small handheld water mister, and you can use whatever you want, but you do need a way to get water into your containers. You'll want some sort of a marker. I used to use Sharpies and I found that those would wear out, especially out in the elements. I now like to use a garden marker. I've heard some people use acrylic paint markers. It needs to be something that can hold up to the elements. This next one is optional, but it's a good one to have. I like to have some sort of small little labels that I can put on the inside of my containers. You don't need to buy any special labels. I just have these on hand, but you can cut up something like your Venetian blinds if you have some that are just sitting around. Or you can use something like used yogurt containers. Just cut them into strips and use those as your labels. But you definitely want to have some sort of tag or label on the inside of your container, just in case the label on the outside wears off. And then finally, you want to have seeds. You definitely need seeds if you're going to do this project. They can be seeds that you've bought or they can be seeds that you've collected. In this video, I'll be showing you all the seeds of the cool flowers that I plan to sow this week. And I'll also share with you the planting depth that each seed should be sown at. If you're planning to sow any seeds and you're not sure what the planting depth is because it's not on your seed packet, a quick search on the internet will tell you how deep you should be sowing those seeds. I always like to refer to multiple good resources when I'm trying to find information like that. Over the next week, I'm going to be sowing 21 cold hardy annuals, which, like I mentioned earlier, I'll be sharing the names of them with you. And I'm excited because I can't wait to have them growing in my yard this year. I will say almost all of these seeds need light to germinate. What that means is if I was to cover them too much, that would actually hinder their growth and they may not germinate for me. So if you ever see that a seed needs light to germinate, that means you just want to surface sow those seeds. You want to sow the seeds on the top of your soil and you want to press the seeds in. And if you are going to cover them, you just barely want to cover them with 1/8 of an inch of fine vermiculite or potting mix. And all of that totally makes sense because if you have plants that self-sow every year and come up for you, for me it would be something like Love in a Mist or calendula. Those seeds have dropped from the plants. I didn't go out there, I did not press them into the soil, I did not cover them with any soil. And then when the fall comes, winter comes, it gets snow on those seeds, come spring, those seeds germinate. And we are basically doing the same exact thing, except we're doing it in a controlled environment in something like a little mini greenhouse, like a milk jug. So the next thing I'm going to share with you are the 21 cool flower annual seeds that I'm planning to winter sow within the next week. And I'll also share with you the planting depth, just so you're aware of how deep they need to be planted. We're going to start with Alyssum, also known as lobularia. You want to surface sow the seeds, which means pressing the seeds into the soil. I didn't collect many of the Alyssum seeds this year because honestly this plant self-sows very readily for me. But you can see that I did collect some seeds. And then I just bought this packet of seeds this year, which I'm very excited about. This should be a very pretty color in the yard. And here's the back of the seed packet. And when it comes to botanical interest, they also have additional information on the inside of the seed packet. And notice right here it says light aids germination. Press seeds lightly into the soil surface. I also have Alyssum Royal Carpet, and I got these from Ocean State Job Lot for 40% off. So if you live in the Northeast, look up Ocean State Job Lot. It's a great place to find seeds for cheap. That's what the back of that seed packet looks like. Notice right here it says barely press in, light aids in germination. And that's a close-up of what the seeds look like. Next we have ammi. Here's the back of the seed packet. It also likes to be surface sown, so I will just be pressing the seeds into the soil. It looks like it has a taproot. It says that it does not like to have its roots disturbed. So when I do sow these seeds, I'll be very careful to not sow the seeds too close to each other. I want to make sure I can carefully pull the plants apart without disturbing the roots. And it shows right there, surface to 1/8 of an inch. And that's what the ammi seeds look like. Here we have bachelor's button, also known as cornflower. You want to sow the seeds about 1/4 to 1/2 inch deep, as the seeds do not need light to germinate. So we have black magic. It says here that the plant does not transplant well. So with that, I'll make sure that I'm not heavily sowing the seeds in my milk jugs. I'll space them out enough so that I can easily take the seedlings out without disturbing the roots too much. The Dollar Tree is a great place to find cheap seeds that still produce very well in the garden. So here's another type of bachelor button that I recently bought, and that's the back of the seed packet. And then clearly you can see that I have some more seeds of bachelor's button, and these are seeds that I had collected from different places over the last few years. You can see the size of the bachelor button seeds. They're actually pretty large. Here we have bells of Ireland. They also need light to germinate, so I will be surface sowing the seeds. And that's what the back of the seed packet looks like. Notice right here it says to barely cover the seeds. This is an important thing to know. When it comes to surface sowing any seeds, you want to keep the seeds evenly moist until they germinate. So for that reason, you either want to be checking on them and spraying them with water, especially when it's been dry out, or if you've not been receiving any snow or rain. And that's another reason why I probably will add a light layer of fine vermiculite on these seeds just to make sure that they do germinate, because the vermiculite will keep the moisture in and allow the seeds to germinate when they're ready. And right here it says bells of Ireland can be slow to germinate, so just be sure you're patient with them. And in case you're wondering, that's what the bells of Ireland seeds look like. Next we have Bidens or Bidens. Now this is not a typical cool flower, I would say. I will share with you that this plant definitely self-sows and comes up year after year. For that reason, I am going to be winter sowing it and treating it as a cool flower in my yard. And Bidens do need light to germinate, so I will be surface sowing them. That's a close-up of what the Bidens seeds look like. I clearly have a lot of the calendula seeds, and I have a lot of different colors. I've mostly collected these from calendula that self-sowed in my yard, except for this packet here. This packet I received from my friend Pam. She also has a backyard plant nursery like I do, and so she's planning on selling some calendula as part of her nursery. I assume it's probably a popular plant that people like to buy for their gardens. So I will definitely be sowing a number of milk jugs of the calendula this year. Calendula seeds need light to germinate. I researched it and it did show to sow them a ½ inch deep, but honestly, you don't want to cover them too much because they do need that light in order for them to germinate. They come in all sorts of sizes and colors. That's what the calendula seeds look like. I have Canterbury bells, and it says it's a perennial. It's actually a biennial. So what will happen is we'll sow the seeds this year and we'll get some green growth, but it won't bloom until next year. And that's what the back of the seed packet shows. Notice right here it says barely press into seed starting mix, which means that the seeds need light to germinate. So that's all I'll be doing. I won't be covering the seeds. That's what the Canterbury bell seeds look like. I have a ton of cleome. I can't believe it. So I'm excited. I'm going to be growing a lot of these for my yard. I have some for my friend Pam. And then I also take care of a garden that's in a rotary that I have adopted, and so I will be planting some out there as well, hopefully. And I'm just looking at all of them, and I have different shades of pink, white, and purple, and there are some taller ones as well as some short or mini ones. And that's what the cleome seeds look like. And by the way, they need light to germinate, so if you're going to sow them with any amount of soil on them, you don't want to cover them. If at most just 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch of soil on them. Wow, I have a lot of cosmos seeds. The seeds need light to germinate. And if you are going to cover them, you can cover them with 1/4 to a ½ inch of fine vermiculite or potting mix. There's the double butterfly cosmos rose bonbon. That's what it says on the back of the seed packet. And some additional information. And I like showing the back of the packets in case you want to stop the screen and read any of it. Specialty cosmos, dancing petticoats. And I must have bought these on clearance, which is why they have a red marker over there. Some more additional information. I'm noticing that these are very old seeds, and that's okay. This is the year to get them planted. We'll see how many of them actually germinate. Again, Dollar Tree has some great varieties of seeds if you are on a budget and you don't want to spend a lot of money, or you just want to experiment with some seeds. These are the Bright Lights Cosmos, and some information on the back of the seed packet for the Bright Lights Cosmos. Another packet of seeds from Dollar Tree. These are the Sensation Mixed Colors Cosmos. And there's some additional information on that variety. Anytime you see seeds in packets like this, they are just seeds that I collected myself. We have some seeds from Burpee, and these are a really pretty color. And they are the Summer Sunshine Mix Cosmos. Some additional information on the back of this seed packet. And again, these seeds are pretty old, so we'll see how they do. And we have the Pink Popsicle Cosmos. Once again, some old seeds. That's what the Cosmos seeds look like. And we have Dusty Miller. Dusty Miller seeds need light to germinate, so I'm just going to be surface sowing these seeds. I have had a lot of success growing Dusty Miller from seed indoors under my grow lights, so it'll be fun to see how these end up doing using winter sowing. What happens is during their second year, they blossom. They have yellow flowers, and then when you let the flowers go to seed, you can collect the seeds. So I was able to collect plenty of Dusty Miller seeds. And we have some seeds from Feverfew. I had a mystery plant in my yard, and I didn't know what it was. Some of you told me it was Feverfew, so I was able to collect the seeds from it, which is exciting. The seeds need light to germinate, so I'm going to be surface sowing, which means pressing the seeds into the soil when I sow them. And I had kept the seeds with the non-seed material, but there are plenty of seeds right in there. Next we have Forget-Me-Not. I know that these seeds are very, very old, and I have Forget-Me-Not that comes up year after year in my yard, but honestly, I want to get rid of the seeds. And if these seeds do germinate, I'll be happy. I can always sell them as part of my backyard plant nursery because I'm sure people would want to buy the plants. So you can see that they're a very pretty blue colored flower, and there's some additional information on the back of the seed packet. And notice it says 1/8 of an inch, so I plan on just surface sowing these seeds and pressing them right in. And that says 2014. Yes, these are old seeds, my friends, and that's okay. That's what the forget-me-not seeds look like. Typically, forget-me-nots are biennial, so I'm assuming this year all they'll do is just have the green growth on them and they'll bloom for me next year. I have 2 packets of Larkspur. Now, from my research, I read that Larkspur needs darkness to germinate, so I'm going to be sowing the seeds about 1/4 of an inch deep. This is the Galilee blend, and there's some information on the back of the seed packet, and there is also additional information on the inside of the packet. For Larkspur, it does not transplant well, so I will be putting the seeds spaced out enough so that I'm not disturbing the roots when it comes time to transplant the seedlings. It also says temperatures above 55 hinder germination, so winter sowing is great for these kind of seeds. Since I plan on sowing some of these seeds indoors, I will be giving them a cold treatment indoors. It says to refrigerate the seeds 1 to 2 weeks prior to sowing. And finally, it's mentioning right here, darkness aids in germination. Here we have the giant imperial mixed colors Larkspur. And some information on the back of the seed packet. See right here where it says direct seed in the autumn, just before the ground freezes? A lot of people do that with all of the cool flowers that we're going over today. That is another option for you to do with any of these plants, is you can direct seed them or start them indoors and put them outside in the fall time so that you have a bigger plant come springtime. Next we have some seeds that I've collected. They are Love in the Mist or nigella. The seeds need light to germinate, and I will be surface sowing the seeds. The seeds are mixed with a little bit of non-seed material, but you can see the seeds. They're the black color that you see there. Next we have Nicotiana. Nicotiana seeds need light to germinate, which means I will be pressing the seeds into the surface. I have Bronze Queen. I got these seeds from Baker Creek, and that's what it says on the back of that seed packet. Notice it says surface sow, and I know these are very old seeds, so I'm glad to be sowing them. They are called Marshmallow. And again, it says scatter the seeds thinly and just press into the seed starting mix, which in our case will be potting mix. And I wasn't joking, they're pretty old seeds. And then here are some seeds that I collected from different years and different colors. We have some yellow, we have some pink, a white one, and I'm not quite sure about the color on that one. These seeds were pretty tiny, so it was easier for me to just put them on paper, but you can at least see and have an idea of what Nicotiana seeds look like. I have a couple of packets of pansies. These were seeds that I collected. Pansy seeds need darkness to germinate. Although I will say I have pansies that drop their seeds, I don't cover them, and the plants do germinate just fine. So keep that in mind. And when I did an internet search, it said to cover the seeds with about 1/4 inch of potting mix or vermiculite. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm either going to press the seeds into the seed starting mix, and if I cover them, I'm barely going to cover them. This is just a mix of different colors of pansies, and these were seeds that I collected. I had bought seeds a few years ago from Baker Creek. They were called Celestial Blue, and those are the seeds from those pansies. And that's what the pansy seeds look like. Petunia seeds need light to germinate, so I will be surface sowing, which means pressing the seeds into the surface. I bought these seeds this year from Dollar Tree. Again, pretty cheap price. I just want to see how do Dollar Tree seeds do. It'll be a good experiment. These are a dwarf bedding mix color of petunias, and that's what the information is on the back of that seed packet. Notice right here it says depth to sow 1/8 of an inch. Whenever you see 1/8 of an inch, take that as you can probably just press that seed into the surface of your potting mix or seed starting mix. And of course, right below it, it says cover with 1/4 inch of soil. It's funny that there's a little bit of a discrepancy, but my plan is I am just going to be pressing the seeds into the surface of the soil because I know that I've had petunias show up as freebie plants in my yard, so they most likely will do fine if you just press the seeds in. And then I have some seeds that I collected. There are just different colors of them that you can see. These seeds are tiny, so I'm not going to take them out of the seed packet, but you can see what the seeds look like right there. Here we have scabiosa. Scabiosa seeds need light to germinate, so I plan on surface sowing them. And all of them were seeds that I collected, and all of them, I believe, are the Black Knight scabiosa that I collected from a park close to my house. And you can actually see that the seeds are very large, which is surprising that you would be surface sowing them. So for that reason, I may experiment actually, and I may surface sow some, and I may lightly cover some, just to make sure that I do get some sort of germination, because I'm skeptical about the whole surface sowing given how big these seeds are. But if you look on the internet, it will tell you you should be surface sowing, which means pressing the seeds into the seed starting mix or potting mix. I've had these seeds forever, and honestly, to me, this plant is kind of a weedy plant, but I have the seeds. I might as well use them in my winter sowing process. They're called Silene, and they are pretty. I just honestly have a love-hate relationship with them because I do view them a little bit as a weed. The seeds need light to germinate, so I'm going to be surface sowing the seeds. And they're called Shocking Pink Silene, and they're very old seeds. You can see based on the date down here, but there's some information on the back of the seed packet. And notice right here it says 1/4 inch of fine soil and then firm lightly and keep evenly moist. So again, they're perfectly fine if I'm just going to surface sow the seeds. And that's what Silene seeds look like close up. Here we have a bunch of Snapdragon that I've collected the seeds from over the last few years. And there are different shades of pink, red, yellow, as well as mixed color of Snapdragons. Snapdragon seeds need light to germinate, so I will be surface sowing the seeds, and you can see they are very, very small seeds. Here are some Strawflower seeds. Strawflower seeds need light to germinate, so I will be surface sowing these. These are from Renee's garden. They're called Dwarf Sunflower Rainbow Bouquet. And here's what it says on the back of the seed packet. They're a few years old, but they still should be fine. And some more additional information on the seeds. And it says cover with 1/4 inch deep. So again, that's why I will be just surface sowing and pressing the seeds in. I have to point out that handwriting, I believe, is my son's. It could be my daughter's. It's definitely not mine. So that just made me happy when I saw that. And that's just a close-up of what the seeds look like for Strawflower. I have some sweet peas, Queen of Night mixed colors. I got these seeds from Ocean State Job Lot, and they were 40% off. Great deal if you have an Ocean State Job Lot store near you. And that's what the back of the seed packet shows. I'll be planting the seeds 2 inches deep, and I want to point out that the packet doesn't state anything about how this plant doesn't like to have its roots disturbed. I can tell you that that is a fact when it comes to sweet peas. So for that reason, I will be spacing out the seeds quite a bit in my milk jugs, so that when it comes time to transplant them, I'm not disturbing their roots a lot. That's what the seeds look like for sweet peas. When it comes to these seeds, I'll be running an experiment. I'm going to be sowing some of the seeds with no special treatment. I'm also going to be sowing the seeds where I've soaked the seeds for 24 hours and then I've winter sown them. And then finally, I'm also going to be sowing some seeds in a different milk jug where I have nicked the seeds, which means taking a nail clipper and just barely nicking the seed and then sowing the seeds. I'll be sure to let you know how that experiment does later in the season. And I have plenty of seeds that I can do this experiment with, which is great. Last but not least, we have Verbena bonariensis. I don't know what kind of Verbena bonariensis they are. They're seeds that I've collected over the last few years. The seeds actually need darkness to germinate, which I thought was interesting given how small the seeds are. And from what I read, I want to lightly cover the seeds, but I definitely want to give them darkness. Now, I thought that was interesting because I've heard people say that this seed self-sows in their yard. So again, it might be a good experiment to, in some cases, I can cover them very lightly with maybe fine vermiculite, and then in other cases, I can also try to just press them into the soil and see what happens. And it's a good experiment to do given how many seeds I have here. Those little brown specks, like tannish brown color specks that you see, those are actually the seeds of the Verbena bonariensis. And so when it comes to the mix of the seeds and non-seed material, it just makes sense for me to sow everything that's in here, and whatever needs to germinate will germinate. I really hope you enjoyed the information that I shared in this video. I was going to show you the next steps in terms of how to winter sow the seeds, but honestly, I've made so many videos showing how to winter sow. So at this point, if you are new to winter sowing and you want to learn how to winter sow, head over to the playlist that's linked down below and check out one of the many videos that I've made on winter sowing. The key is just make sure you're planting the seeds at the right depth based on what the seeds are. In the spring, I will show you updates on all the seeds that I have gone over in this video and that I will be winter sowing. I'll let you know what the next steps are in terms of pricking them out and getting them put in my landscape or potted up. Let me know if you've had success winter sowing any of these cool flowers, or if you've tried winter sowing some other cool flowers that I haven't talked about in this video. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.